you have left the battlefield out of compassion for your brothers and grandfather. They will think that you have left out of fear for your life, and thus their high estimation of your personality will go to hell. Text 36. Avachavanam schabahun vadishanti tavahitaha nindantastavasam martyam tato dukha taram nukim. Translation. Your enemies will describe you in many unkind words and scorn your ability. What could be more painful for you? Purport. Lord Krishna was astonished in the beginning at Arjuna's uncalled for plea for compassion, and he described his compassion as befitting the non-Aryans. Now, in so many words, he has proved his statements against Arjuna's so-called compassion. Text 37. Tova prapshasi svargam jitva va bokshase mahim tasmat utishta kunteya yudhaya krita nishchayaha. O son of Kunti, either you will be killed on the battlefield and attain the heavenly planets, or you will conquer and enjoy the earthly kingdom. Therefore, get up with determination and fight. Purport. Even though there was no certainty of victory for Arjuna's side, he still had to fight. For even being killed there, he could be elevated to the heavenly planets. Text 38. Sukha dukhe same kritva labha labho jayo jayo tato yudhaya yudrashva naivam prapam avapshasi. Translation. Do thou fight for the sake of fighting, without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat, and in so doing you shall never incur sin. Purport. Lord Krishna now directly says that Arjuna should fight for the sake of fighting because he, capital H, Krishna, desires the battle. There is no consideration of happiness or distress, profit or loss, victory or defeat in the activities of Krishna consciousness. That everything should be performed for the sake of Krishna is transcendental consciousness. So there is no reaction to material activities. He who acts for his own sense gratification, either in goodness or in passion, is subject to the reaction, good or bad. But he who has completely surrendered himself in the activities of Krishna consciousness is no longer obliged to anyone, nor is he a debtor to anyone as one is in the ordinary course of activities. It is said, Devarshi bhutatvaninam patrinam nakinkaro nayam rini charajan sarvatmana yasharanam sharanyam kato mukundam parihritya kartam. Anyone who has completely surrendered unto Krishna, Mukunda, giving up all other duties, is no longer a debtor, nor is he obliged to anyone, not the demigods, nor the sages, nor the people in general, nor kinsmen, nor humanity, nor forefathers. Bhagavad 11, 541. That is the indirect hint given by Krishna to Arjuna in this verse, and the matter will be more clearly explained in the following verses. Text 39. Esha te bihita sankye buddhir yoge trimam shrinu Bhuja yukta yaya partha karma bantam prahashyasi. Translation. Thus far, I have described this knowledge to you through analytical study. Now listen as I explain it in terms of working without fruitive results. O son of Pritha, when you act in such knowledge, you can free yourself from the bondage of works. Prabhupada's purport. According to the Nirukti, or the Vedic dictionary, Sankhya means that which describes things in detail. And Sankhya refers to that philosophy which describes the real nature of the soul. And yoga involves controlling the senses. Arjuna's proposal not to fight was based on sense gratification. Forgetting his prime duty, he wanted to cease fighting because he thought that by not killing his relatives and kinsmen, he would be happier than by enjoying the kingdom after conquering his cousins and brothers, the sons of Dhritarashtra. In both ways, the basic principles were for sense gratification. Happiness derived from conquering them and happiness derived by seeing kinsmen alive are both on the basis of personal sense gratification, even at the sacrifice of wisdom and duty. Krishna therefore wanted to explain to Arjuna that by killing the body of his grandfather, he would not be killing the soul proper. And he explained that all individual persons, including the Lord himself, are eternal individuals. They were individuals in the past, they are individuals in the present, and they will continue to remain individuals in the future, because all of us are individual souls eternally. We simply change our bodily dress in different manners, but actually we keep our individuality even after liberation from the bondage of material dress. An analytical study of the soul and the body has been very graphically explained by Lord Krishna. And this descriptive knowledge of the soul and the body from different angles of vision has been described here as Sankhya in terms of the Nirukti dictionary. This Sankhya has nothing to do with the Sankhya philosophy of the atheist Kapila. Long before the impostor Kapila's Sankhya, the Sankhya philosophy was expounded in the Srimad Bhagavatam by the true Lord Kapila, the incarnation of Lord Krishna, who explained it to his mother Devahuti. It is clearly explained by him that the Purusha, or the Supreme Lord, is active and that he creates by looking over the Prakriti. This is accepted in the Vedas and in the Gita. The description in the Vedas indicates that the Lord glanced over the Prakriti, or nature, and impregnated it with atomic individual souls. All these individuals are working in the material world for sense gratification. And under the spell of material energy, they are thinking of being enjoyers. This mentality is dragged to the last point of liberation when the living entity wants to become one with the Lord. This is the last snare of Maya, or sense gratificatory illusion. And it is only after many, many births of such sense gratificatory activities that a great soul surrenders unto Vasudeva, Lord Krishna, thereby fulfilling the search after the ultimate truth. Arjuna has already accepted Krishna as his spiritual master by surrendering himself unto him. Sishyasteham sati mam tvam prapanam. Consequently, Krishna will now tell him about the working process in Buddhi Yoga or Karma Yoga, or in other words, the practice of devotional service only for the sense gratification of the Lord. This Buddhi Yoga is clearly explained in chapter 10, verse 10, as being direct communion with the Lord, who is sitting as Paramatma in everyone's heart. But such communion does not take place without devotional service. One who is therefore situated in devotional or transcendental loving service to the Lord, or in other words, in Krishna consciousness, attains to this stage of Buddhi Yoga by the special grace of the Lord. The Lord says, therefore, that only to those who are always engaged in devotional service out of transcendental love does he award the pure knowledge of devotion in love. And that way the devotee can reach him easily in the ever blissful kingdom of God. Thus, the Buddha Yoga mentioned in this verse is the devotional service of the Lord, and the word Sankhya mentioned herein has nothing to do with the atheistic Sankhya Yoga enunciated by the impostor Kapila. One should not therefore misunderstand that the Sankhya Yoga mentioned herein has any connection with the atheistic Sankhya. Nor did that philosophy have any influence during that time, nor would Lord Krishna care to mention such godless philosophical speculations. Real Sankhya philosophy is described by Lord Kapila in the Srimad Bhagavatam. But even that Sankhya has nothing to do with the current topics. Here, Sankhya means analytical description of the body and the soul. Lord Krishna made an analytical description of the soul just to bring Arjuna to the point of Buddha Yoga or Bhakti Yoga. Therefore, Lord Krishna's Sankhya and Lord Kapila's Sankhya, as described in the Bhagavatam, are one and the same. They are all Bhakti Yoga. Lord Krishna said, therefore, that only the less intelligent class of men make distinction between Sankhya Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. Sankhya Yoga Pritagbala Pravadanti Napanditaha. Of course, atheistic Sankhya Yoga has nothing to do with Bhakti Yoga, yet the unintelligent claim that the atheistic Sankhya Yoga is referred to in the Bhagavad Gita. One should therefore understand that Buddha Yoga means to work in Krishna consciousness in the full bliss and knowledge of devotional service. One who works for the satisfaction of the Lord only, however difficult such work may be, is working under the principles of Buddha Yoga and finds himself always in transcendental bliss. By such transcendental engagement, one achieves all transcendental understanding automatically by the grace of the Lord, and thus his liberation is complete in itself, without his making extraneous endeavors to acquire knowledge. There's so much difference between work in Krishna consciousness and work for fruitive results, especially in the matter of sense gratification, for achieving results in terms of family or material happiness. Buddha Yoga is therefore the transcendental quality of the work that we perform. Text 40, famous verse. Nehavikramanastasti pratyavayo navijate svapamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bayat. Translation: in this endeavor there's no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Activity in Krishna consciousness, or acting for the benefit of Krishna without expectation of sense gratification, is the highest transcendental quality of work. Even a small beginning of such activity finds no impediment, nor can that small beginning be lost at any stage. Any work begun on the material plane has to be completed, otherwise the whole attempt becomes a failure. But any work begun in Krishna consciousness has a permanent effect, even though not finished. The performer of such work is therefore not at a loss, even if his work in Krishna consciousness is incomplete. 1% done in Krishna consciousness bears permanent results, so that the next beginning is from the point of 2%. Whereas in material activity, without 100% success, there is no profit. Ajamil performed his duty in some percentage of Krishna consciousness, but the result he enjoyed at the end was 100% by the grace of the Lord. There's a nice verse in this connection in Srimad Bhagavatam 1:5-17. Tvaktva sadharmam charanam bhujam harer bhajan navakyo tapatet tato yadi yatra kvavad hadram abud amushakim kovarta apto bhajatam svadharmataha. If someone gives up his occupational duties and works in Krishna consciousness and then falls down on account of not completing his work, what loss is there on his part? And what can one gain if one performs his material activities perfectly? Or as the Christians say, what profiteth a man if he gain the whole world, yet suffer the loss of his eternal soul? Material activities and their results end with the body, but work in Krishna consciousness carries a person again to Krishna consciousness, even after the loss of the body. At least one is sure to have a chance in the next life of being born again as a human being, either in the family of a great cultured Brahmana or in the rich aristocratic family that will give one a further chance for elevation. That is the unique quality of work done in Krishna consciousness. So maybe should we pause there?
This would be a great time.
Okay, great. That's also a very, very famous verse. So you can start with the next reading with that next famous verse. Okay, nice to see so many Vaishnavas here. I'm going to change the gallery so I can see everybody. I can't see everybody, but I see a lot of names. Famous people: Vishnu Gada Prabhu, Sobarade Das, Haryashva Prabhu is there in person. Vamanade Prabhu. So many great souls here. Wonderful. So let's see. Sita invited me. So Sita or Drona or Haryashva, what do we do next? I just wait for comments?
Well, you're waiting for comments. Sometimes
Okay.
we have to stir them up. I am one such stirrer.
Okay, stir away. I see Golokananda Priya has her hand up, or his hand. I think it's a her.
Her, yes.
Her.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I have a question. How do we know how much did we achieve in Krishna consciousness? Who tell us? Because we cannot know ourselves how much we have, how much advancement we made, so that if we don't complete it, then we can continue in our next life.
Okay, that's a very nice question. And it kind of nicely illustrates what Prabhupada's trying to help us understand, which is in material consciousness, one's thinking, what am I going to get out of this? You know, I go to work because I get a paycheck. If the boss tells me one day, you know, the company's broke, we can't pay you anymore, but we'd love it if you'd keep coming to work, we would say, thank you very much for the invitation, but I think I'll go somewhere else, isn't it? Or, you know, any other endeavor that we put our minds to, like Prabhupada mentions, if you start some endeavor, if you don't complete it, then ultimately it's a failure. You know, you start to build a house and something goes wrong, the house never gets finished. Well, you just lost all that money, you lost all that time, you lost all that effort. But he's pointing out that real spiritual activity in Krishna consciousness, whatever we do, there's benefit. And as we advance in that, just like Arjuna, Krishna ultimately told him, Arjuna, I want you to fight, and don't worry if you win or lose. You might win, you might lose. It doesn't matter. I want you to do it, and therefore you should do it because I want you to. So in a similar way, in one sense, as devotees, we should be trying to cultivate that mentality. You know, I go out on book distribution and nobody buys the book. Okay, I still tried. So Krishna's pleased. Or every single person I speak to takes a book. Oh, that's wonderful. Krishna must be pleased. Or whatever other service that we do. You know, sometimes we go to cook in the kitchen and everything goes smoothly. And sometimes nothing goes smoothly. I remember when I was in Denver, I used to dress the Gauritai deities. And I swear Lord Nityananda would go out of his way every time to just test me to the max. You know, pins would go the wrong way and things wouldn't fit. And you know, I would just pray Lord Nityananda, why what do I, help me here? But to help me understand, the goal isn't for me to be happy through my service. The goal is to try to please him. So we may never, so kind of the answer to your question is, in one sense, it's not even relevant, because if we really love Krishna, if Krishna wants us to come back in this world again and again and again, we'll do so as long as we can be connected to him. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says something along those lines that some devotees can help me. You know, it doesn't matter. Let me come back as an insect as long as I'm in the house of devotees, or something like that. Some amazing expression he made. So we should try to change our mentality that what really matters is if I'm just trying to please my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, the previous acharyas, and Krishna, And it doesn't really matter if I'm advancing or not, because if I'm advancing, then I really don't care. I just want to serve Krishna. Having said that, we should be very serious and very anxious to try to make advancement in Krishna consciousness. And we can measure our advancement by a few symptoms. One, we stop worrying about if I'm becoming advanced and we just worry about if I'm pleasing Krishna. That's the first sign. The second sign is, even more importantly, we stop worrying about if other people are more advanced than me. We get rid of that kind of envy that sometimes is there. How come, he or she is manifesting their qualities in this way? That competitiveness, that enviousness goes away. And I would say the third thing is we care more about trying to help relieve other people's suffering than our own benefit. Those are the real signs. The day we wake up crying about how so many people are suffering in this material world and how I'm so limited in my capacity to try to help them, but somehow or other, because Prabhupada's mercy on me, I have to try to do that myself. The day we wake up feeling like that, then we know we're starting to get a little advanced.
Thank you, Nutama Prabhu. We have another hand up. Looks like Mother Sita.
I just wanted to ask you, we covered a lot here, Buddha Yoga, Sankhya Yoga. If you can just summarize that, that'd be great.
That was a lot of verses. We started at 35, right? So Krishna kind of concludes his debate, his discussion with Arjuna, saying, you need to fight because as a Kshatriya, you have to do it. Otherwise, people are going to discredit you. That's the last couple of verses we met. And then he switches gear because this is right in the middle of the second chapter. And he explains, okay, now I'm going to talk about how in verse 39, now I'm going to explain about how you can work without attachment to fruit of results. So he's going to kind of step up. First, he talked about duty. Now he's going to talk about, and then he talked about kind of analyzing. You should fight without attachment for loss or gain. In this way, you will not incur sin. And then he's going into a little more analysis about, in this famous verse, in this endeavor, there's no loss or diminution. He's starting to get into more detail about the actual practice of yoga and how if one acts in yoga or in connection with Krishna, in connection with God, that one, as he said, there's no reaction. And two, you similar point, you free yourself from sin. And he's starting to explain that you can actually, no matter what your situation is, you can start actually connecting with God, with Krishna, through whatever activities you perform. I mean, this second chapter is like a beautiful chapter because it's just titled "The Contents of the Gita Summarized." So in 72 verses, the whole Gita is summarized. So the verses are really jam-packed with a lot of information. Hari Ashra with a smile on his face. Okay, this is going to be a trick one. No.
So you can elaborate. Arjuna, Krishna was speaking to Arjuna. Remember, Arjuna didn't want to fight. He didn't want to do his duty. Right. And Krishna's taking a new approach of talking to Arjuna now. He's trying to motivate him as a warrior, as a Kshatriya, do his duty. But Arjuna has two fears. One of them is he's afraid that he's going to overcome, sin is going to overtake him, and he's not going to be happy. And later on, you start reading that if Arjuna dies on the battlefield, whatever he does, he won't incur sin because he's doing his duty. And that then you went to the finer point that the real happiness that Arjuna is thinking about his own happiness based on sense gratification, but the real happiness is pleasing Krishna. Trying to, it's not about our sense gratification. So what's interesting to me is how Krishna is taking Arjuna on this ride. He's still telling him the same thing, but he's dragging his consciousness also. And maybe you can keep on going from there. Because I always try to keep doing is keep hearing the conversation. And now you're at you're getting ready to explain that there's no loss of diminution. So it's still trying to convince Arjuna, still trying to convince us to fight. You know?
Yeah.
But maybe I don't know. You can
Yeah,
elaborate.
no, that was a beautiful summary, and it just it makes me, it reminds me in one of the purports, Prabhupada lays it out very clearly. Arjuna was thinking, if I win, I got to kill everybody, and if I lose everything, and therefore he's disturbed. And Prabhupada said both those options were based on his sense gratification. Both of those, he was seeing lose, but both options were stuck in the paradigm of something in this material world is supposed to make me happy. So Krishna, it's interesting too, like from the communications work that I do, we talk a lot about how you have to understand where other people are coming from, what are their needs, interests, and concerns. So Krishna starts out in one of his, as you just point out, Hayasha, one of his earliest arguments is, hey, look, you're a Kshatriya. You got to do it as a Kshatriya. And then once he's kind of got his attention, he goes to another level, another level, another level. So he gradually kind of pulls him into full Krishna consciousness. So it's the whole process. And that's what's happening to us in our lives. Krishna's gradually pulling us in to real full Krishna consciousness. As long as we stop kicking and screaming and try to go along with his plan for us.
Thank you, Anutama Prabhu.
Great summary, Hariyashra Prabhu.
So we're at 5:30 now. We're coming to the end of our session here. I wanted to take the opportunity because Anutama Prabhu is with us. I mentioned that he's our GBC, but he's also ISKCON's communication. He had a role recently in the in last week's inauguration in the prayer breakfast, and I was hoping maybe you could say a few words about that.
Yeah, sure.
Share with the devotees here.
Yeah, it wasn't actually the prayer breakfast. That's a different thing that they do every year. But there's something called the Presidential Inaugural Prayer Service. I think it's the full. Okay. So yeah, the name is similar. And in that, so that's something that they do every 4 years. It's happened since the time of George Washington, they say. I wasn't around to see that as far as I remember, but they say that it's happened since George Washington. And they have a worship service. And at least in recent years, it's been interfaith. So I'd had some contact with some of the people on Biden's transition team. They actually had reached out to some Hindu leaders asking, what's your thoughts on the policies and where should the country go and things like that. And I don't know how far that's going to get up the chain, but anyway, I was part of a conversation like that. And then afterwards, the person that organized that contacted me and said, would you be willing to offer prayer, to read a prayer during that event? And it would have been, unfortunately, because like this, and of course, there's advantages here. You're all able to have this class at 5 o'clock every night. You would not be able to jump in your cars or take a bus to the temple. This way you all can connect. And this event, it kind of would have been nice if everybody was together at the National Cathedral as they usually are, but they did it online. So I was able to read a prayer about that event. So that was nice. They showed the president and his family sitting in the White House, also watching on television on Zoom. So I was there in my tilak and mentioned what spokesperson or something, communications director for the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So it's the first time that we've done anything like that. I think it's just a kind of opportunity that we really hope devotees at every level, all across the country, every city, every town, every village, and all over the world, should really also be doing what they can to reach out and meet neighbors and local political leaders and other religious leaders and scholars to help to build friendships and to help them to look for ways that we can work together to try to promote a more God-conscious society, and to look for ways that they can assist us in sharing Krishna consciousness. I can finish with one quote from Prabhupada if there's time. It's just 4 lines long, if you think. Is that okay, Drona?
Yes, please.
This is from a letter Prabhupada wrote to Tejas Prabhu in 1973. If you make some of the big government officials interested in our movement, then our strength will increase. This is a very important point here. Because we are in the material world, sometimes we require that help. Another point is that if a government officer becomes our admirer or member, then many others will follow. So try to make them sympathizers. So important thing, I think we got through 50 years of our pioneering years of the movement, kind of being not so well understood, not so much connected with and directly influenced in the society around us. And I think the next 50 years should be a period of time where devotees are becoming more and more active in the society at large. We have sannyasis and other renunciates whose goal is to preach to us and remind us to not get entangled in this material world. But most of us are householders who, like Arjuna, have to fight. Arjuna said, I want to renounce the world. And Krishna said, sorry, Arjuna, that's not your dharma. You're in the world, now make it Krishna conscious. So whether we're, we work in construction or we drive a taxi or a professor or, we're a therapist or whatever our roles might be, how do we bring Krishna into the world? I think that's the challenge for us. And then on the weekends, we can do Harinam and distribute books and all those things. But what do we do 9 to 5 to try to have an impact in a gentle and respectful way on the world around us? So that was an opportunity to do that, just to be kind of part of that little get together.
Very inspiring. Thank you for sharing that with this assembly of devotees. And thank you for all the wonderful service that you're doing for ISKCON. We'll conclude here. We thank all the participants for coming. We gather every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 5 o'clock to 5:30 for this Bhagavad Gita happy hour. We'll see you again.
Oh, cool. Is that the name, Bhagavad Gita happy hour?
Yeah.
I love it. That's fantastic.
So
that's great. That's like, right, Prabhupada said the Sunday love feast. Why the Sunday love feast? Because it was the 60s and that's what that was their terminology. So the Bhagavad Gita happy hour, that's fantastic. That's great. That's great. That's great. Wow. Wonderful. I hope to come back and enjoy a few more drinks of nectar with you.
That's the idea. That's the idea. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you all. Hare Krishna.
Thank you,
Prabhupada.
Prabhupada.